I'm Jared.
I'm Brandon.
This is the Heel to Face podcast. We're talking WrestleMania Backlash this past Sunday. We're talking AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view and so much more, including my strong opinions on the zombies. Yes, the zombies that you saw at WrestleMania Backlash. That and so much more as the Heel to Face podcast starts right now.
Fans celebrate with me from Rome to Rochester.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So the Heel to Face podcast is on the air. Brandon with myself, Jared. You can find us on social media at KRockJared and Icebreaker21 respectively. And most importantly, follow the show at Heel to the Face. We've got a lot to talk about. We're coming off of WrestleMania Backlash this past Sunday. We're going into Hell in a Cell, which surprised a lot of people. So we'll start with WrestleMania Backlash, and we'll start with, I guess, the big story of the week when it comes to WrestleMania Backlash and the zombies. A lot of people were not a fan of the zombies. A lot of hatred, let's just say backlash against the zombies. I'd like to let's hear what your opinion was in the zombies showing up during the lumberjack match.
Oh, dude, it was awful. Absolutely awful. I'm not going to lie. When that was starting to happen, I went to the kitchen, grabbed myself a drink because I needed to top off the drink to finish out the rest of the program. So I got up. I got out of the living room and went and got myself a drink because that's how bad it was. And the worst part about it is we later find out that The Miz has his first ever major injury. Tore his ACL.
I think if you ask me, then that kind of plays better and more into the part of the zombies because everyone's like, well, the zombies just ate him and didn't do nothing. Well, apparently got hurt. So apparently it's got some sort of weight to it.
The zombies sucked. I don't care if they were going to make a storyline. They're going to make a storyline out of it. The zombie thing sucked. If you're going to pump up this movie that the Batista's in, why not have Batista do it?
You know, it seems kind of apropos because this past week was the anniversary of Capital Combat 1990, Return of RoboCop, where RoboCop making an appearance at a WCW pay-per-view to promote RoboCop 2.
Have you been spying on my Peacock stuff? Because I just started watching that, actually.
Capital Combat or RoboCop 2?
Capital Combat.
Oh, yeah, and it's Return of RoboCop, which I think it's a little strange because it calls the Return of RoboCop, and I'm just not really familiar with the time that they used RoboCop in WCW before.
And I just realized it was a young McFoley in there. So
there's Cactus Jack, and there's Sting, and all sorts of good stuff.
Bam Bam Bigelow, man.
And here's the thing.
Love his skills.
So here's my thing. So he's against the zombies. I'm not saying I'm for the zombies, but my question is why is it getting so much hate? Why is this getting so much hate? But then the Boneyard match at WrestleMania was, to many, the match of the year last year.
Okay, it definitely wasn't the match of the year, that Boneyard match. It was okay for what it was.
It got no hate. It was the highlight for many of WrestleMania. The biggest show of the year, the highlight was the Boneyard cinematic match.
I didn't hate the match, but if you're going to call it the match of the year, you got some problems. Because I'm not trying to discredit someone's taste in wrestling.
Did you hear anyone say that set the business back 30 years?
No, of course not.
Okay, so why didn't that set the business back? At WrestleMania, your marquee matchup, one of your marquee matchups, AJ Styles and The Undertaker. Undertaker's last match, a cinematic match that involved, him driving up to a farm, and we've seen the House of Horrors match, that Funhouse match at WrestleMania. Why are those looked at like pretty good, not bad, highlights of WrestleMania, but yet the zombies making a 5-minute appearance in a mid-card match it was not good. Pay-per-view.
It was not needed. It was not needed. It was not needed for that match because you can literally, there's enough box office appeal, at least for wrestling fans, that, okay, I want to see Damian Priest kick the crap out of The Miz. And I say that in all due respect with Miz because Miz is good at what he does. He's the best talker, one of the best talkers in sports entertainment. He's one of those guys that comes off as a douchebag on the air, and he makes you want to reach through the TV and punch him in the face. That means he's doing his job. And Damian Priest is finally a chance for him it was finally a chance for him to show his skills and not be overshadowed by what Bad Bunny did, which he did a great job. I love Damian Priest, and to me, if you're talking about the zombies, you're talking about the wrong thing, and that's the problem that I have because I enjoy what Miz is. Miz is not going to give you a Daniel Bryan style match. Miz is what he is. He's a good worker. He does what he does. He's a great mouthpiece. He comes off, and he makes you want to reach through the TV and punch him right in the face. He does his job, and Damian Priest is pretty damn good, but we're talking about zombies. That's my problem with it.
Yeah, and okay, I guess if that's a decent complaint. I guess my thing is, though, we shouldn't have so much been talking about zombies in the sense of I didn't hate the zombies. I didn't like the zombies. When you say things aren't needed, I agree with you. That was my complaints about the AEW issues the last couple weeks, is those things just weren't needed to be added. I'm not saying that they're good or they're bad. They should have just not existed. Chris Jericho should have just not been thrown off the cage. And at worst case scenario, if you had to throw him off the cage, which you didn't, you could have at least not shown it, maybe shown it from a different angle, from behind, like the camera where you're just thrown off.
Well, let's be honest.
We've seen that in WWE
It would have
before.
been leaked somewhere because of social media fans and the attendance. Someone would be like, "Oh, did you guys see what he landed on? I know you didn't see it on TV, but look, it looks like a pillow. It looks like a futon."
I remember I went to the Great American Bash 2005, Muhammad Hassan's last match in WWE. They lifted up the grate from the entranceway, and Undertaker last rided him through the stage, and he landed on the ground. We didn't see what he landed on because they just showed the last ride.
It was cushions.
They showed the last ride, and then we showed the Undertaker standing victorious. And then a few minutes later, after they had a chance to clean it up, then they showed Muhammad Hassan lying on concrete, which he wasn't on concrete.
No, of course it wasn't on concrete. But I will say, credit to...
It wasn't on concrete originally. They must have moved the mattress and threw it.
Of course, they made it
so
look
why
nice.
couldn't they could have done something like that in AEW? They could have just...
Well, the problem is this is the age of everything gets recorded. So... somebody in the audience would have seen, oh, hey, AEW's crew, their stage crew, they just moved a bunch of stuff to make it look like, oh, he really landed in a tough spot.
Or just essentially you could have, because it was against the camera, because remember, everybody's on the bowl side of the stadium.
Sure, I get
and
that.
then you throw him off the side towards the stage. He lands. Yes, everyone in the crowd can see from a distance that it looks not, but just essentially don't put the camera on it. You just show the throw, or just, again, not do it at all. I think that's what we're trying to talk about.
There's a few technical
it wasn't
issues.
Needed.
We did talk about that. The issues were like they actually showed MJF and they showed Chris Jericho having a conversation, which they should have, like you said, they should have showed the in-ring action, kind of not show like, okay, this is what we're going to do next. We're going to talk through. The point is you don't show that stuff. You know they talk about it. When you get them in a headlock, all right, what are we doing next? Shoulder tackle, just like Ready to Rumble. You saw that.
So essentially, again, moving on from AEW, moving to zombies. Yes, it wasn't needed.
Who would have thought we talked zombies on our podcast?
Well, as Corey Graves said, no, ECW is not being rebranded or rebrought back because that was one of the big complaints. Is their debut show had the wrestler, the zombie, and that I think has more of a complaint because he is a talent. He is not an added thing, and also that was the rebirth of ECW, which had this huge momentum going in. This is their debut show. This wasn't like 2-3 years down the line with ECW. This was like their first show. So I can understand some complaints there. But with this zombies, I guess my thing is I've heard a lot of pretty well-known names in the wrestling business saying it's these reasons. It's the Shockmaster. It's RoboCop. It's these reasons why WCW went out of business. And I want to personally say that is not why WCW went out of business. Because if you remember RoboCop and you remember the Shockmaster, those all came well before WCW was leading the ratings for 83 weeks.
And hold on. Let me stop you there. Because I actually, speaking of 83 weeks, great podcast, by the way. If you listen to that podcast, and you get to hear the backstage, the stuff you don't hear about. Maybe there's falsely reported information out there from, everybody's favorite writer, Dave Meltzer, for example. Eric Bischoff, I love what he has to say because if he had it his way, WCW would still be around. It's more of a, just not to go too far on a tangent, it was more of a Turner issue than it was WCW. That's really what it came down to. It wasn't bad gimmicks. It wasn't this. The ratings were still good. If you look at the ratings back then, I know they were kicking the shit out of WWE for 83 weeks. We know this. But the ratings they were getting towards the end are still better than what AEW and what Raw was getting now, and SmackDown for that matter. Yeah. It's a different thing now. But I don't think it had anything to do with the Shockmaster or anything like that. It's more, they got, and I hate to say this, but they got screwed by Turner and not Ted himself, but higher ups, and that's literally
by
coming
AOL
from,
actually, really.
Well, AOL, yes,
AOL kind of bought it, yes.
But they got screwed because it wasn't. People were like, "Oh, it had to be Turner." No, it was not. Eric Bischoff even came out and said that. You think Eric Bischoff's going to sit there and say some bullshit? Come on, if you listen to his show, you know
there's negativity. There's stupid things that happen in wrestling. It is something that, unlike every other sport and other entertainment, it is literally a 7 days a week, 365 thing. There is Raw every single week. There has been, I want to say, 60. We're probably at least, maybe even more, 60, 70 Raws. 70 Monday Night Raws since there's been a crowd for them, and 70 SmackDowns since there's been a crowd, or at least 52 plus 2 months or whatever it has been, 60 to 70. So there has been 120 weekly television shows that they have produced just since the pandemic has started, not counting pay-per-views, not counting NXT, just Raw and SmackDown. So in 120 events, things are not going to be great every single minute. And I guess my thing is, if zombies, come on, was it needed? No.
Unnecessary. 100% unnecessary.
Unnecessary, but is it set the business back? I think.
No, that's a little extreme. Did I hate it? Yes. I don't like to use the word hate. I just didn't. I mean, let me rephrase that. I don't like to use the word hate, so I strongly disliked it. Let me just check that. Let me check the box there. I strongly disliked it. It was unnecessary. You don't need it. You got a guy like Damian Priest who you're trying to build up as this megastar, and you got The Miz, who is the perfect person to be in the ring with to help make Damian legit to a bigger audience, because Miz has that box office appeal. You know, people can talk about his in-ring abilities, this and that, which I disagree. I think he does a good job, but he has that box office appeal. When you put somebody in the match with Miz and you beat Miz, you're made. You're made at that point, because the non-traditional wrestling fans know who The Miz is. And when they hear, oh, The Miz is facing Damian Priest, oh, who's this guy? Like if you're a non-diehard hardcore wrestling fan, you may not know who Damian Priest is or what he was before WWE. So this opens it up to a whole new audience, because believe it or not, we've talked about it. Just because you watch Raw and SmackDown doesn't mean you watch NXT. We know that. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing, and the ratings tell you that. So to me, you didn't need the zombies. It was a waste of time. That's why I got up. Literally, I got off my couch, went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, grabbed myself a drink, because I'm like, I can't sit here and watch this whole damn thing. It was just terrible.
I want to say the final thing is Chris Jericho is the one who tweeted out this, set the business back 30 years. And a lot of people agreed, but I want to give Chris Jericho the benefit of the doubt in saying that the only reason he tweeted that out is kind of as a joke, because they said that about his match, Blood and Guts. There's the rumors that set the business back 30 years or some nonsense. I don't think Chris Jericho, without that comment made about his AEW match, would have said anything about the zombies. Would have just been like, that's a way to do business.
Here's the thing too, and this goes out to the internet wrestling community. And I love Chris Jericho. Mm-hmm. You know how much I appreciate everything he's done for the business. I love we've talked about how great his lifestyle is. He's a rock star too. But just because he says it doesn't mean it's true. But a lot of internet wrestling people in the community are like, oh my God, Chris Jericho said it. Oh, it's definitely true. Like, come on, enough with that. He said it, and I think you're right. I think it had to do with the Blood and Guts thing. That's where it comes down to. And here's the thing. Chris Jericho says things that, it's tongue-in-cheek with Chris Jericho. Yes. So come on. Take it as you will. It's just Chris Jericho being funny. Knock it the hell off.
Speaking of what we were talking about a few minutes ago, where I talked about the cushion incident with Muhammad Hassan and The Undertaker in Muhammad Hassan's last match, I was at that pay-per-view, and I feel really old, because at that pay-per-view there was a match between Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, where if Rey Mysterio won the match, Eddie Guerrero wouldn't reveal the secret, in which he ended up revealing on Tuesday Night SmackDown, which was in Rochester, New York. And that
were you there?
I was as well for that SmackDown in Rochester, New York. And he revealed that he was the father of Dominic. And why I say this makes me feel old, because now we are looking at a point where Dominic and Rey Mysterio are tag team champions. I'm old enough to have driven myself to a pay-per-view and to wrestling shows in which, like, I was adult. I didn't have to ask parents' permission. I had my own car, and I drove myself to a wrestling show in which a 10-year-old Dominic was the prize between Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio. Now that 10-year-old Dominic is a tag team champion. Shows what I've done in that last 10 years plus of time.
I got to cut you off real quick. By the way, that is what we call a great transition, by the way. And I love the fact that Dominic and Rey, first time. You never really see that anymore. You don't see a lot of first time championships. Father son, I think it's awesome. It's great to see that. It was to me, that was one of the best moments of the night. I enjoyed that.
The only title change, yes.
It was great. Yes, it was the only change, but it was just fun. It was so raw. It was I'm sitting there like, man, that is cool. Like, who would have thought Rey Mysterio and his son, if you would have said that when you were at that show, oh, yeah, they're going to be tag champions someday. You're going to be like, yeah, okay, not going to happen. I don't even think Rey's going to be around wrestling that much longer. Honestly.
I think I would have probably said I had nothing against Dominic because you didn't know at the time. Who knows? But I guess the fact that, with his dad, I'm sitting there thinking, like, his dad is probably on the other direction of his career.
Sure.
Like, by the time that Dominic would be in wrestling, Rey would have been gone for a very long time.
And here's the thing.
I thought.
And this is what I'll say. I believe this, and I could be wrong, but I think Rey Mysterio would have retired if it wasn't for Dominic getting into the business. I think what he wanted to do is show him the business from from being a professional, doing the right thing. And all accounts, everything I've ever heard from podcasts and other outlets, Dominic has learned so much from his dad, and everybody that I've seen, read, heard, they say he is an absolute pleasure to be in the locker room. And that's just hearing it from people that are actually in it, listening to different podcasts, different platforms, not Dave Meltzer, because we know Dave Meltzer doesn't get everything. But I just love it. I thought it was one of the cool moments. And if you didn't get chicken skin on that, you got to get yourself checked.
So if you were watching AEW Dynamite this past Wednesday, you might have thought you tuned into a rerun on TBS of Major League because Jon Moxley's new theme song is Wild Thing. I don't know. They got the permission for it.
Oh, I'm sure Tony bought it.
But yes, so you got Wild Thing with Jon Moxley coming out. I like the new theme song. It seems to fit him pretty well. Jon Moxley showed up at a show this past week with a guy who was just recently on television, or at least was featured when it comes to Dark Side of the Ring, Jon Moxley and Nick Gage.
Nice.
As we're coming off of that Nick Gage Dark Side of the Ring that was about a week ago. Did you check out this Dark Side of the Ring Nick Gage yet?
I did. I enjoyed it.
What? Now, here's the thing. And it's kind of I use this word again, apropos, or at least it's fitting, because Nick Gage is the modern day version of a man who actually just passed away this past weekend, New Jack. They have a lot in common, both personally and professionally.
You got that
I guess
right.
the difference is I don't know so much about for New Jack. I knew that he was a pretty wild person, but Nick Gage is, when it comes to like wanting for people, he's got that Mick Foley attribute of wanting people to get their money's worth. Like that whole thing of him, he's like bleeding out of his armpit.
He's bleeding like a stuffed pig. Yeah.
And he wants to go back out for the 40 people who paid. Like,
and they caught it on camera. Oh, just put a duct tape on and I'll put me back out. It's like, dude, you're like in the helicopter. He was dead. He was clinically dead, and obviously he's around because he's doing some things now. It's crazy because when you see this, like, not to get graphic, but that wasn't pretty. I'm just saying.
Do you care at all about deathmatch wrestling when it comes to, like, let's say, I understand we all like street fights and we stuff like that, but when it comes to what Nick Gage is in, like the straight up violent, like we saw that he was in with David Arquette, those kind of matches, I personally, you want to talk about setting the business back. I'm not saying they set the business back, but I don't know.
It's not everybody's flavor, dude.
It's not really my flavor.
I don't mind it.
It's not my flavor, I think, a lot because I know it's never going to make it to WWE.
No,
so some of these guys, if they ever do make it to WWE, which a lot of them actually have a scarlet letter on them for being a part of this, Jon Moxley's and Chris Cactus Jack are a few of the names that have made it through. But a lot of times, the New Jack and Nick Gage, they look at this and it's reasons to really not hire you versus
they
hire
didn't
you.
really go mainstream.
And seeing this on your resume, I feel like I would get hired as a wrestler quicker than Nick Gage would because you don't want this. WWE is the opposite of this. They don't want anybody who's even participated in this for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like you said, you named a couple. I mean, the list is pretty small. I mean,
it's just you get to a point like it's just you're just always trying to top yourself, and it's just too much, and it's just. I think that's with WWE why we love that Hell in a Cell match is because it's unique. There's not so much we got with Mick Foley and The Undertaker like that before. We still haven't seen so much like that since. Sure. But if every single match was like that, it would kind of ruin it. There's a little too much of a good thing, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's like we've talked about on many occasions over the last 4 years of our show. It's that Royal Rumble, the greatest Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, you don't want to water it down too much. You want to make it more of a special occasion.
When you're throwing people through hundreds and hundreds of light glass tubes, then it kind of takes away from when you want to just hit them with a chair.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing. I don't mind the extreme matches, but that to me, I couldn't watch it all the time. It would be more like, okay, these two badass brawlers, these guys are the deathmatch kings. Sure, I'll watch them kick the shit out of each other, but I'm not going to sit there and watch it every single week. To me, I don't mind it, but it's not my flavor either. I'll watch it here and there. We get some of those deathmatch style or hardcore matches. I'm good with that. I don't need to have deathmatch. It's just, I don't need to have too much of it.
And one thing we sometimes have too much of, and WWE taught us that when they introduced this pay-per-view, it's the next one coming up, Hell in a Cell. Back in the day, Hell in a Cell was obviously few and far between. It was like the culmination of a feud. Now it's a pay-per-view, and to many's surprise, it's the pay-per-view coming up next month. Many thought it was going to be Money in the Bank next month, then Extreme Rules and SummerSlam. But rumors are Hell in a Cell was moved up because maybe Money in the Bank in the month of July, instead of Extreme Rules, might be the return to live crowds. One of the people that's been pushing, or at least one of the companies that's been pushing for live crowds to return maybe even sooner than WWE wants, is Fox. They have been putting pressure on WWE as of late to return to live crowds. So I'll ask you this. With that original time frame we talked about, SummerSlam having a live crowd and being the return to live crowds, do you see that being the return to live WWE crowds or earlier?
I think it's SummerSlam. I think it is. I mean, to be honest with you, I think where things are going with the public CDC regulations or guidelines, I should say, more guidelines, I think we're getting to the point where full crowds will be here by the end of summer. And what's the best way to finish off the summer right in the summer is SummerSlam. Yeah. And I think that gives you enough time to see where things go because things are opening up. The whole mask thing, that's different now. So you're going to see what really happens with the pandemic. The next month or two is going to tell us exactly where we're going and what we're doing, and I think it's going to be after SummerSlam.
AEW's Double or Nothing next week. They've got a full crowd at Daly's Place. I'm wondering if they're going to change it up to actually have the full crowd in which they've had in before. What I mean by that is right now they have the setup where the crowd is in the bowl of the auditorium, I guess you could say, and then they have the entranceway. But in the past, when they went to Daly's Place and they were trying to have as many people as possible, the stage had people, and then they had more of a smaller entranceway.
Yep.
And obviously, it's hard to believe now, and can't wait till we finally go back to it, but the live shots of the side of the stage. We're obviously watching Dynamite and all the pay-per-views. It's a shot straight on of the stage. I can't wait till we go back to where we have people in the crowd in the shot. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And it'll be nice because then
the cameras are facing people.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be a different angle.
So I'm wondering if at Double or Nothing it's going to be a full crowd, but the same camera angles facing the stage. Or if they're going to put some people on there too, really try to get as many people in there as they can, have the camera facing people instead of the stage. That is something, I guess, at Double or Nothing I'm looking forward to. Ring of Honor, as we've talked about before, they are returning to people, or at least for a show, come, I think, middle of June for one of their shows in Baltimore. Nice. They've got people coming. AEW, I don't know if they're hitting the road, but they've got some shows coming up outside of Florida in the month of July. So, yes, things are definitely moving forward. I can't wait till they move forward a lot more. Mainly because I can't wait till we get people in certain crowds so that then they can be expanded. Because we know, obviously, at first it's going to be shrunken down. The quicker we get a little crowd is all of a sudden the quicker we can get to expanded crowds.
Yeah, I'm ready for the doors to be wide open. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait till that day comes and go back to not only wrestling shows but any other sporting events or live shows. I'm going to tell you right now, when things go full bore, you're going to have a lot of options because every musician, everybody's going to be like, man, I've been on tour in 2 years. I'm in. We're going to do a big tour. It's going to be great. And you know what? The problem is you're going to see a lot of scalpers taking those tickets and selling them for a lot of money. So when you go to those live shows coming up, I would say make sure you got an extra few bucks sitting around.
So one person who's probably not going to be involved in that recently, the former now IWGP Heavyweight Champion after he had to vacate his belt, Will Ospreay, hurts his neck.
Oh, that's no good.
And that's one of the more serious injuries. He is definitely, in my lifetime, one of the more promising guys. He is somebody I've kind of followed pretty much since he's 18, since I've seen him in New Japan. But before, he was one of the major players in New Japan back when the Young Bucks were still there, and John Moxley's and Chris Jericho's and all those people were showing up in New Japan. He has been on the rise, that he is the face of New Japan.
Yep.
For the lack of better people, obviously, because there's Jay Whites and there's others, Kushida, Okada. Not Kushida, that's NXT. Okada. But other names. So he is a big face. Are you worried at all? Because neck injuries. We saw. Stone Cold Steve Austin. That really hampered his career. Even though he came back, he was never the same. And Ospreay's a high flyer. That is his gimmick.
It's going to be tough. His style, he may have to adapt a little bit differently, so maybe this could be a good thing for him so he can kind of expand the arsenal even more. I know he's got quite the arsenal as it is, but sometimes you just got to change it up. As you know, I'm going to go back to another superstar who, not neck, but shoulder issues, Randy Orton. Randy Orton, if you don't remember, he was a high flyer in the beginning. He did a lot of things off the top rope. Do you see Randy on the top rope very often or at all? Not so much. You just got to change the game, change how you're doing things, and actually it might be better for him because it could prolong his career after this. Sometimes it takes an injury to say, okay, I got to stop doing certain things. I got to start being smarter so I can prolong the career. Bronson
Reed is the new North American champion. He beat Johnny Gargano this past week on NXT. That was the big title change. A pretty decent match from what I saw. Do you like Bronson Reed as your North American champion?
I do. I really do. I'm a huge fan of his. I like exactly what he's doing. He's got a cool look. I like his gimmick, the Colossal. That's awesome. I think it's cool. I like everything that he's doing. He's good on the mic. I think he's the total package. I think that's the kind of guy you want holding that title. I got to tell you, the cupboard is definitely not bare in NXT when it comes to all divisions.
Well, we'll finish off the show on that. NXT with some recent firings as of late. Do any of these firings bother you? Some of the only people, obviously, we knew Alexander Wolf. Skylar Story, I knew her because she was from the Buffalo area, and she made her way up through some of the smaller indies in Western New York before she moved down to Florida. Do any of these firings bother you? Because frankly, most of these people haven't really even been on TV, so it's not like the WWE a couple months ago that was getting rid of big names. Here we're getting rid of people that they haven't been utilizing anyways, and this might be better for them to finally go get some work.
Honestly, the most prominent one might be Drake, because Drake was he was the new Mike Chioda, I felt like.
Not Drake Maverick.
No, not Drake Maverick. I don't know his last name, but Drake, the referee, had the nice haircut. You've seen him. He's done a lot of matches. He did I think it was Gargano and who am I thinking of? Ciampa, thank you. Oh. They did a match where it was all black and everything, it was that Falls Count Anywhere. It was
yes.
He was in the match, or he was the referee in that match. And I remember hearing him, Drake. I keep hearing his name, Drake. I'm telling you, that's a big one. There's a lot of different circular things going on the internet. I'll let you guys look at that. But unfortunately, business is business. You just got to keep moving.
Yeah, I feel like most of these guys are just sitting at the Performance Center. They're working every single day. And somebody like Skylar Story, for example, she has been under the WWE NXT banner for a very long time, and yet I have never seen her compete in WWE, the NXT banner.
Honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't even know who she was.
Yes. That's
no disrespect. I just didn't know.
And maybe because of COVID, reasons. Obviously, they're not doing house shows. I feel like with house shows and live events for NXT, these people would be getting some time, but unfortunately, they're not getting that time.
It's weird though. I want to take that back. Alexander Wolf, I thought they were going to use him more with Imperium, and I honestly thought there might have been an angle for Alexander Wolf and Killian Dane there for a little bit. I thought they might. That was something they could have used because the old team with Eric Young running the show with Sanity, they didn't do anything with it. So obviously, when you saw that, they had to have some writing on the wall that says, okay, Alexander Wolf is probably not going to be around much longer. So obviously, we see what happens here this week.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the show. Next week, we'll give you our preview for AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view. Guess where it's going to be?
Where's it going to be?
Daly's Place in Jacksonville.
No
I know,
way.
it's crazy.
What?
It is only literally show number 75 in a row from Jacksonville, Florida, and Daly's Place. But this time, out of all of those shows in the past, except for the ones in the past when it was part of the touring schedule,
Sure.
these ones are going to have fans.
Yes, the big difference.
The big, or more fans.
That's cool. Hey, fans, I want fans.
Because they've had fans for a while, and more fans.
More fans, more noise. It's just going to make the product even better.
So for our penultimate show of May, because next week will be our last show of May, and then we move into June. We'll talk so much more wrestling next week. We'll start talking so much more as we head into the summer. For Brandon, I'm Jared. This has been another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast.